What happens when one of the most carefully controlled stars in Hollywood walks onto a live television set known for unpredictable questions, and the conversation drifts into territory no publicist can fully contain? What happens when Tom Cruise, a man whose smile has been analyzed for decades, suddenly stops performing and starts pushing back? Before we go any further, subscribe to the Narration Show, like this video, and comment below where you're watching from, because what you're about to experience isn't just an interview. It's a moment that went completely off script. The applause rolls through the studio as Tom Cruise steps onto the stage of The View, confident, polished, every inch the movie star audiences think they know. He waves, flashing that familiar grin, the one that has sold billions at the box office and reassured millions that everything is under control. Sunny Hostin smiles as well, welcoming him with warmth that feels genuine, professional, practiced. The other hosts chime in with light banter, jokes about stunts, about dedication, about how he never seems to age. The audience laughs, relaxed, settling in for what they assume will be a safe, celebratory conversation. Tom takes his seat, posture straight, hands loosely clasped, eyes scanning the room like a pilot surveying the runway. He answers the first question smoothly, talking about passion, about cinema, about pushing limits. His voice is calm, measured, confident. The cameras glide across the audience, capturing nods, smiles, admiration. This is familiar territory. This is control. But then Sunny leans forward slightly, her tone shifting just enough to register. She references intensity, commitment, beliefs, framing it as curiosity, but the subtext hums beneath her words. She asks about influence, about responsibility, about how personal conviction can affect others. The room doesn't gasp yet, but something changes. Tom's smile tightens for a fraction of a second, almost imperceptible, but the audience feels it anyway. He answers politely at first, choosing words with care, speaking about respect, about individuality, about people making their own choices. His tone remains even, but his eyes sharpen, attentive now in a different way. Sunny listens, nodding, then follows up, pressing gently but persistently. She talks about power, about public figures shaping narratives whether they intend to or not. Her voice remains calm, but the question lands heavier than the ones before it. The audience shifts in their seats. A few murmurs ripple through the crowd. This isn't hostile, but it's no longer surface level. Tom inhales, slow and deliberate. Inside, a familiar tension stirs, the one he's spent years managing, redirecting, smiling through. He responds again, reiterating personal freedom, emphasizing boundaries between his work and his private beliefs. Sunny doesn't interrupt, but when she speaks again, her words are sharper, more direct. She asks whether avoiding the topic altogether is itself a statement. The camera cuts to Tom's face, and this time the smile doesn't return immediately. There's a pause, longer than comfortable, long enough for the audience to notice. Someone in the crowd clears their throat. Another leans forward. Tom finally speaks, and his voice is still calm, but the edge is unmistakable. He says he's here to talk about his work, about storytelling, not to be reduced to headlines or assumptions. The words are polite, but firm, drawing a line. Sunny nods, acknowledging the boundary, but she doesn't retreat. She reframes, asking whether that separation is even possible in today's world. A hush falls over the studio. This is the moment when interviews usually pivot, when hosts soften and guests glide away. But neither of them does. Tom's jaw tightens slightly. He leans forward, mirroring Sunny's posture now, signaling engagement rather than avoidance. He talks about discipline, about focus, about not letting noise distract from purpose. His language is controlled, but his conviction is palpable. Sunny responds with composure, reminding him that questions aren't attacks, that curiosity is part of conversation. She speaks about accountability, about transparency, her tone respectful but unyielding. The audience senses it now, that electric tension when two strong personalities refuse to yield ground. A few gasps slip out, followed by scattered applause that quickly dies down, unsure which side to endorse. Tom pauses again, and this time the silence stretches. Inside his mind, thoughts race. He knows how this looks. He knows how clips will travel. He also knows he's tired of dancing around the same assumptions year after year. When he speaks, there's less polish, more honesty. He says he believes in letting work speak for itself, in not feeding narratives that thrive on controversy rather than substance. Sunny listens carefully, then challenges the idea that silence doesn't also feed narratives. Her words are precise, loyally, measured. She's not accusing, she's interrogating an idea. The audience reacts audibly now, a collective intake of breath. This is no longer a promotional interview. This is a philosophical standoff unfolding live. Tom's voice lowers slightly, controlled but intense. He pushes back, saying there's a difference between accountability and intrusion, between dialogue and spectacle. He asserts that some lines exist for a reason. The cameras catch the other hosts exchanging glances, aware they are witnessing something unscripted, something they may not be able to smooth over. Sunny responds with equal calm, saying lines are often defined by those with power, and questioning who gets to draw them. The words land hard. A gasp ripples through the audience, louder this time. Someone claps instinctively, then stops. The tension is thick enough to feel, pressing against the studio walls. Tom exhales, a slow breath through his nose, eyes steady on Sunny. He doesn't raise his voice. Instead, he speaks with deliberate clarity, saying he respects her perspective but won't be boxed into conversations that ignore his autonomy. His words are firm, unmistakable. This is the pushback. This is the moment control shifts from performance to principle. The audience reacts in waves. Some applaud. Others sit frozen. The hosts attempt to steer the conversation, but the energy has already changed. Tom leans back slightly now, signaling he's said what he needed to say. Sunny nods, acknowledging his stance, but the intensity doesn't dissipate. It lingers, unresolved. As the segment moves toward a commercial break, the applause feels uneven, uncertain. The cameras pull back, but the tension stays locked in the room. Tom adjusts his jacket, expression composed once more, but something has cracked beneath the surface. Sunny straightens her notes, professional as ever, but her eyes reflect the weight of the exchange. The audience knows they've just witnessed something rare. Not a shouting match, not a meltdown, but a quiet confrontation between control and challenge, played out in real time. As the lights dim slightly for the break, murmurs fill the studio, people whispering, replaying lines, sensing that this moment will not stay contained within these walls. And somewhere backstage, producers are already glancing at monitors, marking timestamps, realizing that this interview has veered far beyond its original plan. What happens next will define not just the rest of the show, but how this moment echoes far beyond it. The cameras return from commercial, but the room doesn't reset. The tension that built before the break hasn't cooled, it has thickened, settling into the studio like a held breath. Tom Cruise sits composed, posture relaxed but alert, the calm of someone trained to manage pressure. Yet the shift in energy is unmistakable. Sunny Hostin adjusts her papers, professional, focused, aware that whatever comes next will be watched more closely than anything that came before. The audience applauds on cue, but it's different now, restrained, cautious. People aren't sure what they are clapping for anymore. Support, curiosity, relief that the show is continuing at all. Tom offers a brief smile, polite, controlled, while Sunny thanks him for staying through the break. Her tone is respectful, but there's an undercurrent of resolve. She isn't finished, and neither is he. She resumes by widening the frame, talking about public discourse, about how live television often exposes uncomfortable truths because there's no time to polish them away. It sounds conciliatory, almost reflective, but the implication hangs in the air. Tom listens, eyes steady, nodding once, signaling his following every word. The other hosts lean in subtly, sensing the balance could tip again at any moment. Sunny then poses a question framed as hypothetical, asking how someone with immense influence decides when to engage and when to step back. It's softer than before, but no less pointed. Tom answers carefully, speaking about responsibility to craft, about choosing focus over distraction. His words are measured, his tone even, but the room remains taut. The audience listens intently, some nodding, others frowning, weighing every sentence. Sunny follows up, gently but firmly, asking whether choosing not to engage can unintentionally amplify speculation. The question lands, and this time there's an audible murmur. Tom's jaw tightens almost imperceptibly. He pauses, longer than before, as if deciding how much of himself to reveal. When he speaks, there's a shift. The polish thins. He talks about decades under scrutiny, about narratives that harden regardless of explanation, about learning that not every door needs to be opened. The honesty catches the room off guard. A few audience members gasp softly. This isn't deflection, it's fatigue, carefully controlled but real. Sunny listens closely, her expression thoughtful. She acknowledges the burden of constant scrutiny, but counters that transparency can also be empowering, especially in a world hungry for authenticity. Her voice remains calm, but the conviction behind it is clear. Tom leans forward again, elbows near his knees now, signaling engagement. He says authenticity doesn't require full access, that boundaries are part of mental discipline. His words are firm but not hostile. The audience reacts again, applause rising then faltering, unsure whether to cheer restraint or challenge. The moderators exchange quick glances, aware that steering this conversation back to safe ground may no longer be possible. Sunny presses, not aggressively, but persistently. She speaks about viewers at home, about young people watching, trying to understand how power and privacy coexist. The question isn't accusatory, but it is personal. Tom's eyes flick briefly toward the audience, then back to Sunny. He exhales slowly, choosing honesty over deflection. He admits that no approach is perfect, that visibility comes with trade-offs he's still navigating even now. The admission lands heavily. The studio quiets completely, as if everyone senses this is a rare crack in the armor. Sunny nods, acknowledging the vulnerability, and for a moment the tension softens, replaced by something almost collaborative. But then she adds one more thought, carefully worded, suggesting that dialogue, even uncomfortable dialogue, can humanize public figures in ways silence cannot. The line is gentle, but it strikes deep. Tom's expression tightens again. He responds firmly, saying that dialogue must be mutual, not performative, and that some conversations are staged to provoke rather than understand. A ripple moves through the audience, louder this time. Applause breaks out from one side of the room, while others remain silent. The divide is visible now, almost physical. Tom's voice remains controlled, but there's intensity beneath it, the sound of someone drawing a boundary in real time. Sunny meets his gaze, unflinching, and replies that intention doesn't always determine impact. The exchange escalates not in volume, but in weight. Each sentence feels heavier than the last. The hosts attempt to interject, offering lighter questions, but the moment resists redirection. Tom answers briefly, politely, but the gravity lingers. Sunny returns to the core issue once more, summarizing both perspectives, attempting to bridge rather than provoke. The audience exhales collectively, sensing a potential landing. Tom nods, appreciating the effort, but clarifies one final time that he refuses to let his identity be reduced to sound bites. His tone is resolute, unmistakable. This isn't anger, it's resolve. Sunny acknowledges his stance, her voice softening slightly, signaling respect even in disagreement. Applause rises again, steadier now, less reactive. The tension hasn't vanished, but it has transformed. What began as confrontation has become a complex exchange, layered with respect, frustration, and mutual recognition. The camera cuts to faces in the audience, some thoughtful, some conflicted, all engaged. As the segment winds down, the energy remains charged. Tom thanks the hosts, his voice warm but guarded. Sunny thanks him in return, professionalism intact, eyes reflecting the weight of what just transpired. The show moves on, but the moment doesn't release its grip. Backstage, producers are already whispering, replaying lines, marking timestamps. They know what they have. Not chaos, not scandal, but something rarer, a genuine, unscripted moment of tension that reveals more than any rehearsed answer could. Social media teams begin clipping, framing, preparing for the wave they know is coming. In the audience, people lean toward one another, whispering reactions, replaying phrases. Some feel energized, others unsettled. Everyone feels like they've witnessed something real. As the lights shift for the next segment, the room buzzes with restrained conversation. Tom sits quietly now, hands folded again, composure restored, but something has shifted. Sunny straightens her notes, her expression thoughtful, perhaps replaying her own words. Neither appears rattled, but both carry the weight of the exchange. And beyond the studio walls, the first notifications begin to light up screens. Clips are uploaded. Captions are written. Narratives start forming. The interview has officially left the room, entering a space neither Tom nor Sunny can fully control. What happens next won't be decided on that stage. It will unfold in headlines, comment sections, debates, and living rooms. The confrontation may have been quiet, but its echo is anything but. By the time the studio lights dim and the next segment begins, the interview has already escaped its container. It's no longer just a conversation between Tom Cruise and Sunny Hostin. It's a moment in motion, rippling outward, accelerating beyond anyone's ability to steer it. Backstage, the energy is electric and uneasy, the kind that follows something unscripted and irreversible. Tom rises from his chair once the cameras are fully off him, smoothing his jacket with a familiar, practiced gesture. Crew members smile politely, a little too carefully, unsure whether to engage or give space. He thanks a few people quietly, his voice calm, professional, but inside his thoughts are loud. He knows exactly which lines will travel. He knows which pauses will be replayed, which expressions will be freeze-framed and dissected. Sunny remains seated for a moment longer at the table, scanning her notes even though she doesn't need them anymore. Her posture is straight, composed, but her mind is racing. She replays the exchange not as clips or headlines, but as intention. She asks herself the same question she always does after moments like this. Did I ask what needed to be asked? And just as quickly, she answers herself. Yes. Audience members begin filing out, buzzing with energy that feels heavier than excitement. Some speak in hushed tones, others animated, hands moving as they reenact lines they've already memorized. A woman near the aisle shakes her head, saying she didn't expect that from him. Another counters immediately, saying she respected how he stood his ground. The debate has already begun, raw and unresolved. Tom reaches his dressing room and finally allows his shoulders to drop. He sits, exhales slowly, and stares at the wall for a long moment. His phone lights up almost immediately. Messages from his team. From colleagues. From people who've been waiting years for a moment like this to unfold publicly. Some praise his restraint. Others warn him how this will be framed. He reads a few, then sets the phone face down. Not yet. He needs quiet before reaction. Across the hallway, Sunny is also receiving messages, though hers carry a different tone. Some congratulate her on asking the hard questions. Others accuse her of pushing too far, of disrupting what was supposed to be a light segment. She absorbs it without flinching. She's lived in this space long enough to know that discomfort often signals truth brushing against power. The first clips hit social media within minutes. Short edits. 10 seconds. 15. Tom leaning forward. Sun is calm but pointed follow-up. The silence. The murmurs. Captions frame it as confrontation, as defiance, as tension boiling beneath civility. Comment sections ignite instantly. Some declare Tom evasive. Others call Sunny relentless. Many admit they can't look away. Tom's car pulls away from the studio, the city sliding past the window in a blur of movement and noise. He watches it without really seeing it. His mind drifts to earlier years, to other interviews, other moments where control slipped just enough to reveal something real. He wonders briefly whether he could have answered differently, then lets the thought go. Second-guessing has never been useful. At home, Sunny changes out of her on-air clothes, moving methodically, grounding herself in routine. She turns on the television briefly, only to see her own face staring back at her from a paused clip. She turns it off just as quickly. She doesn't need to watch herself to know what she said or why she said it. By evening, the headlines multiply. Tom Cruise pushes back on live TV. Interview goes off script on The View. A tense exchange leaves audience divided. Each outlet chooses its angle, its emphasis. Some focus on Tom's refusal to engage further. Others praise Sunny's persistence. Think pieces begin to form, pulling the moment into broader conversations about celebrity power, privacy, and accountability. Tom's team convenes quickly, discussing whether a statement is necessary. Opinions differ. Some argue silence will be read as avoidance. Others insist that responding will only fuel the cycle. Tom listens, then decides. No statement. Not yet. He's said what he wanted to say, on camera, without a script. Anything else risks diluting it. Sunny, too, considers whether to address the moment publicly. She drafts a message on her phone, then deletes it. The conversation doesn't need a verdict. It needs space. She knows that adding more words right now might collapse nuance into sides. As the night deepens, reactions grow more polarized. Fans argue fiercely online, pulling quotes out of context, assigning intent where none was declared. But alongside the noise, something else emerges. Longer clips surface, showing the full exchange, the moments of listening as well as tension. Some viewers soften their initial reactions. Others dig in deeper. The moment refuses to flatten neatly. Tom finally scrolls through his phone again, slower this time. One message catches his attention. It's from someone he worked with years ago, someone outside the industry spotlight, thanking him for articulating the importance of boundaries in a world that demands constant access. Tom nods to himself, setting the phone down again. That message matters more than 1,000 comments. Sunny receives a message from a young law student who says watching her hold her ground calmly changed how she thinks about asking hard questions. Sunny smiles, a small, tired smile, feeling the quiet weight of that responsibility. These are the moments the cameras don't capture, the ripples that never trend but last longer. Late-night shows pick up the story next, hosts offering jokes, reactions, exaggerated reenactments. The audience laughs, but even there, something about the moment resists being reduced to punchlines. It was too controlled, too measured, too human. Tom watches none of it. He goes for a run instead, letting movement burn off the remaining tension. As his feet hit the pavement, his thoughts finally slow. He knows this won't define him, but it will follow him for a while. And that's fine. He's lived with echoes before. Sunny sits with a cup of tea, scrolling briefly through thoughtful threads where viewers discuss the exchange respectfully, acknowledging both perspectives. She lingers there longer than she does anywhere else. That's the conversation she hoped for, even if it's quieter than the outrage. By the next morning, the moment has fully entered the public bloodstream. It's being debated in offices, classrooms, living rooms. Some see it as a clash, others as a necessary friction. Few deny its impact. The interview didn't explode. It didn't implode. It did something rarer. It unsettled. And in that unsettled space, both Tom Cruise and Sunny Hostin move forward, unchanged in their convictions but newly aware of how deeply a few unscripted minutes can resonate. The stage may be behind them, but the conversation is far from over. Because moments like this don't end when the cameras shut off. They linger, waiting to be interpreted, challenged, and carried forward. And as the noise continues to swell, one truth becomes clear. This interview didn't go off script by accident. It went off script because neither of them was willing to pretend. The aftermath doesn't arrive all at once. It rolls in slowly, like a tide that keeps climbing long after you think it's reached its peak. By the time the sun rises the next day, the interview has settled into something heavier than a headline. It has become a reference point. Morning shows replay the clip with furrowed brows and measured tones. News sites embed the video beneath phrases like unexpected, tense, and unscripted. Commentators argue not about what was said, but what it meant. The audience reaction becomes a story of its own. That collective hush, that uncertain applause, that moment when everyone watching felt the shift and knew this wasn't being steered anymore. People who were in the studio talk about it differently than those who saw it online. They describe the air changing, the way the silence pressed down before Tom spoke, the way Sunny didn't flinch. They say you could feel the line being drawn, not with anger, but with conviction. Those stories spread too, adding texture to the clips that can't capture atmosphere. Tom Cruise keeps his routine unchanged. He shows up to meetings, trains, prepares, moves forward. To the outside world, he appears untouched, still composed, still in control. But privately, he reflects. Not with regret, but with clarity. He knows he didn't explode. He didn't deflect with jokes. He stood still and spoke deliberately. In a media world that rewards spectacle, restraint becomes its own kind of disruption. Sunny Hostin continues her work with the same focus she always has. On air, she asks questions with precision, her tone steady, her posture calm. Viewers watch her closely now, projecting meaning onto every glance, every pause. She doesn't address the interview directly at first, and that restraint speaks volumes. She understands something the internet often forgets. Not every meaningful moment needs immediate commentary to validate it. As the days pass, the conversation matures. Think pieces emerge that resist choosing sides. Writers talk about power and privacy, about celebrity culture and public curiosity, about what it means to ask hard questions without cruelty. Some praise Sunny's persistence. Others defend Tom's boundaries. Many acknowledge that both positions can exist without canceling each other out. Fans replay the moment not for drama, but for nuance. They notice how Tom never raised his voice, how Sunny never interrupted, how neither reduced the other to a caricature. In a media landscape crowded with shouting matches, that restraint feels almost radical. Social media quiets just enough for something deeper to surface. Viewers share personal stories. A teacher talks about using the clip to discuss respectful disagreement in class. A manager says it changed how they approach conversations with their team. A fan admits they went in expecting chaos and left with something far more uncomfortable and far more valuable. Perspective. The audience gasp becomes symbolic. People analyze it, replay it, talk about it as the sound of expectation breaking. It wasn't outrage. It wasn't shock alone. It was recognition. The sound people make when they realize they are watching something real, something that wasn't rehearsed or softened for comfort. Tom eventually breaks his silence in the quietest way possible. Not with a statement, not with a tweet, but with continued consistency. He lets his actions do the talking, reinforcing the boundaries he articulated on air. Some interpret it as stubbornness. Others see integrity. The debate continues, but the noise doesn't rattle him. He's been here before. Sunny, days later, references the importance of dialogue on her show without naming names. She speaks about how progress comes from tension handled with respect. The audience applauds, not because they are reliving the moment, but because they understand it now. The applause sounds different, deeper, earned. And then, slowly, the cycle moves on. Another controversy rises. Another clip demands attention. But this moment doesn't disappear. It lingers. It gets referenced when interviews turn tense, when guests push back, when hosts press forward. Remember when becomes a phrase attached to it. That's how you know it mattered. What remains isn't a winner or a loser. It's a reminder that live television can still surprise us. That disagreement doesn't have to be explosive to be powerful. That control and challenge can exist in the same space without destroying it. The real aftermath lives with the viewers. In the way they listen a little longer before reacting. In the way they recognize that boundaries and accountability aren't opposites, but forces in constant negotiation. In the way they remember that sometimes the most compelling moments are the quiet ones, where no one storms off, no one shouts, and yet everything changes. And now, the conversation passes to you. What did you see in that moment? Did Tom Cruise's insistence on boundaries resonate with you? Did Sunny Hostin's persistence feel necessary? Or did you find yourself caught in the tension between them, understanding both sides at once? Share your honest thoughts in the comments. This story doesn't end without your voice. If you want more cinematic, intense, emotionally charged stories that take you inside moments television couldn't control, make sure you subscribe to the Narration Show. Like this video, share it with someone who appreciates real, unscripted tension, and stay with us, because the next story might push even further past the script.